The meeting will come to order, please. The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act for this meeting have been satisfied. A copy of the annual meeting notice was sent to the press, now be current, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, the municipal website, and filed in the office of the city clerk. Would you please take a second, turn off your electronic equipment, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Becker.
Here.
Commissioner Amadeo.
Here.
Commissioner Blumberg.
Here.
Ed, you're on the agenda for a report on dredging. In case, did you notice that?
We'll give you a brief synopsis of what's been going on at the stakeholders meetings that were established to try to activate the dredging process. Okay, the initial meeting had maybe 7 people. The last meeting we were up to 30-some people. The issues that were discussed were funding, obviously one of the major items, disposal site, another major item, and what other communities are doing. Currently, Avalon, Ocean City, portions of Stone Harbor, and some Summers Point and Cape May are actually dredging. They're doing dredging. In Cape May, that dredging was FEMA funded or state funded. The other communities, pretty much it's bonded. They're doing the majority of their money, although Ocean City has gotten some resiliency money. Currently, we have $130,000 maybe from a Fish and Wildlife grant for dredging. We have that money that's supposedly out there, of which I've asked Assemblyman Brown to send a letter to both the DEP and the DOT Commissioner asking them the status, where is our money? And I was always told, and I think Commissioner Amadeo will bear out that we were told that money was for Margate and only for Margate. So that's happening. Through a planner, a fellow named Ian Jerome, who represents a gentleman named Abramhoff. Mr. Abramhoff owns a parcel next to the expressway, which used to be called the Gateway site. It was going to be developed for stores, hotels 20 years ago. Never came to fruition, and now that site has been in the past and will become a major disposal site for dredge residuals. I was told somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.3 to 1.7 million cubic feet of storage on that site. Don't know, and I also know that Mr. Abraham is in the negotiations with the Department of Transportation for them to buy a portion of the site. I'm not sure what their intent is. I was told it's for doing some state-owned waterways, including Gardner's Basin, to use that site for a disposal site. One point of contention I have with the DOT, and I haven't got them to acknowledge this yet, is that two of our Sunset and Orient Canal, the center 100 feet of those are state-owned. So my feeling is, if it's the state owns the state's responsibility, that would at least take a piece of the burden off of the city of Margate. That's what that money was for also. So I am attempting to set up a meeting with the people from the maritime group from DOT to get that clear. It's clearly illustrated that that's owned by the state on the tidelands maps. So that, and I have sent that through Jim Rotella. We have sent that information to them. About There are also a few other things going on. That $120,000 to $130,000 grant we have is for what's called thin layer disposal, essentially spraying the residual matter over the meadows to restore the meadows, to raise the level, also to restore the meadow's edge. There is a meeting, and I don't have the date handy, it's in my calendar, in June with, June 11th, thank you, with both groups to discuss, with the state agencies, to discuss that mechanism or that method of disposal and to see what they need, how they can help us. So I am going to continue to push on this because it's an issue that not only affects the waterfront homeowners, it affects all the residents of the town. Because all the boats that are back there are not just waterfront homeowners. There are other residents, there are permanent residents, there are summer residents. Plus, it's part of it's part of the fabric of the town. There's a financial factor here. I know for a fact at least one, if not two, waterfront homeowners have asked for tax appeals because they don't have enough water behind their homes. That could be significant if it was to get moving, amongst others. So that's where we are to date on dredging. It's something that I want to pursue heavily. I have been involved in this, trying to make something happen, and we keep hitting in the roadblocks, running into these roadblocks since 1994, when we were trying to dredge behind the log cabin. So I'm hoping that this is our window. It took us that long to make the pump station happen between Ventnor and Margate. It's been 20-some years, and that's finally going to happen. I'm hoping this is going to happen with dredging. We have Robin Scott's place back there. It's one of the few places you can rent a boat in the area. They have no water. The other marinas along there, some have tried to dredge themselves and then found that they filled right back up. I mean, immediately. So unless this is done comprehensively, it's going to be difficult to make it successful. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, not a question, a comment. Well, maybe it is a question. It was suggested to me that maybe the time is right that we engage in a expert in the field, and that certain expert, we know, we have experience with him, Mr. Farrell. What is your thoughts on possibly retaining him? And Scott, maybe you can weigh in order to help us. And what do you think that would cost if we tried to do that?
My thoughts would, do I believe we should bring him on board? Absolutely. The man is, he has a wealth of knowledge, especially in our back bays. He was part of a team a while ago that did a little study back behind the log cabin area when we almost had it going there, and then we ran into a roadblock. Knows more about the New Jersey waterways than probably anyone in the state. So when it comes, it's very difficult for the regulatory agencies to contradict what he says, because in most cases they have to go to him, they ask him for advice. So I am definitely on board with bringing him into the equation. I'm not sure exactly when, but he will definitely help us get through some hurdles. As far as what he would cost, I know when we utilized Dr. Farrell when we were fighting the FEMA maps. I think it was $3,500 his retainer was, if I'm not mistaken.
I would love to have input on this. First off, I think Stu Farrell would be an enormous help to us. And he is extremely reasonable when it comes to dollars and cents. And he indeed is probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the state of New Jersey, and is considered as such by the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers. A little bit of background. Other towns are ahead of us, such as Avalon, who have worked on this for 15 years to be able to dredge out their lagoons, which they are doing right now. Ocean City is in the process. You probably read in the paper, they're going to spend $4 million to truck dredge material down the Wildwood's old dump site. The state and the federal government will not allow us to simply move the dredge material to our beach or to other areas in our back bay, as they used to allow, and as states like Florida currently allow, because I have explored it and examined, gone to sites and seen how they do it. There is a committee which rose out of the Coastal Coalition Committee, which fought the V-zone designation, wherein Stu Farrell and Mayor Palugi and others are involved, and Eddie has been going to those meetings, to change the dredging regulations to make dredging more economically feasible. The problem we have now is it's just not economically feasible to dry this dredge material and then truck it to a gravel pit, whatever, 30 miles away. You're talking millions and millions of dollars. I would heartily endorse having Stu Farrell be a consultant for us, because he knows he works for all these other towns. And it's through Stockton, it's through our local university. And so the people who work on this, they're not really in private industry, they're in a research. What's the official name again? It's called the Stockton Coastal Research Center. So for all the above reasons, absolutely get Dr. Farrell involved. I think you'll find him very reasonable, and I know you'll find him extremely informative and of great assistance. And again, this is a passion of mine. We need our back bay dredged. And I know you all know it, and it's just extremely difficult to comply with the current regulatory scheme. But as I say, there is a committee that has been requested to change those regulations so that we're more in line with some of our other states on how we deal with dredging problems. I could go on for this forever. I'll stop now, Mayor.
Well,
Okay.
I don't think anybody, challenges Dr. Farrell's qualifications. He certainly is qualified that. And his history in the past has been, I think his rates are reasonable. So why doesn't Scott, why don't you, or John, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Or Mario?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's get a proposal.
Why don't somebody talk to him and see if he'll make us a proposal?
That sounds like a green light to me. Will do.
Mayor, when you get a chance. So we just charged you with that, Scott.
All right,
to get a
come in.
proposal from him.
I talk to Stu all the time.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Amadeo has a question, please.
Yes, Ed, I was fortunate enough to attend the first meeting that was sponsored by you and a former Commissioner Tawby. And you did mention about the spraying at that time. As compared to the conventional method that we're all aware of how you dredge, is that as cost effective? Is it more cost effective and more efficient? And why are they going in that direction? Can they move volumes like you can?
It's unfortunately, at this point, it's in its infancy in this region. It's done in other states a little bit more efficiently, but it takes a vast amount of land because you're only allowed to spray a maximum of 9 inches of material. And because it's very difficult to regulate, they generally keep it at 6 inches. So for example, we probably have 150,000 cubic yards of material in our back bay that has to come out. There isn't enough land to do it. It can be done, as one piece of the puzzle, it can be done. Now, there was a project done, and it just so happens it's Mayor Palugi's niece is the Army Corps of Engineers rep for the project that was done down in Stone Harbor in Middle Township. And I'm trying to set up a meeting with her. The cost, I can't get my hands around the cost because there have been no bids for it yet. It's something that, depending on which group in the DEP you talk to, some like it, some don't. Last time in a conversation I had with Mark de Blasio, who runs my Wildwood office, and is also the engineer for Stone Harbor, he said he had heard whispers from the DEP that they don't like it. Could be just because it's new, and they tend to poo-poo new stuff. But If I was a betting man, I would say it would definitely be more expensive than if we could just pump this material to the other site. And this is a piece I need to get out there. Initially, the site at Gateway I thought was too far away. But in conversations with Ian Jerome, who brought me into a conversation with Barnegat Bay Dredging, they feel that with a booster pump, they could easily pump from here to that site. And that would be the least expensive way to dredge. I don't know what the disposal cost will be, but that would be the least expensive because you're just taking the slurry, you're putting it on the site, letting it dewater naturally, and then it could be trucked away at some point in the future. So.
And you were aware of the fight we had with the possible spoil site on the other side of the Margate Bridge and
I was
the litigation that was involved there, so that issue's totally dead now?
No, that actually, I had a go from all agency people on that. The problem we had was the price that it's a privately owned site, the price to purchase that site was ridiculously high, and they didn't want to negotiate. Now, that was several years ago, and it has since become the ownership of the estate. So if, that was part of what I thought we could use that money for that we have. If we could have purchased that site, and it was a viable site for a portion of our dredging. It was definitely a viable site. So again, that's another piece. What I think we're going to find is we're going to have to put this together in a puzzle. Ventnor is also, in our conversations with the Coastal Coalition members, Ventnor obviously needs their mile stretch dredged. Now that's actually part of the Intercoastal Waterway, so that's supposedly the responsibility of the Army Corps of Engineers, but I haven't heard anything about them doing that site. And if I'm not mistaken, Scott, you have much more on that than I do.
At one time, John, and this is a topic you can go on forever, we took 5 years to get a dredge spoil site approved for Ventnor West, and then there was a political battle.
I remember that.
And there were charges that it would be hazardous to the residential neighborhoods, which I always thought that was not true, but so that was allowed to lapse, and that had been approved by federal and state agencies. There are two other viable alternatives. There is Shelter Island, which has an enormous dredged deep hole, 40-plus feet deep, which was man-made back in the 20s. I have photographs of it. And that would hold an enormous amount of dredge material. And there is at least some basis to argue that Margate has some rights to that island, at least according to some old maps I have. We also have the possibility along the stretch that was dredged out where the two islands were in front of the log cabin, that one of the more feasible ideas that's coming up and being utilized in other states is to rebuild wetlands by using dredge material. And instead of pumping it 4 miles, you're pumping it 400 yards. And then you plant wetlands, Spartina and Altiflora you put in there, but you have to brace it and hold it and maintain it. And the third option would be Dog Beach, or what was known as Malibu Beach, going by Ocean City. I mean, that has eroded over 100 yards, I know, because we used to run our dogs there all the time. And you now have at bad high tides, waves breaking on that state highway. So logically, you'd say, why can't we put it right here, which would help kill 2 birds with 1 stone, protect the roadway, and allow us to deal with dredge material. But we have to deal with the state of New Jersey. The Army Corps, and all the discussions I've ever had with them, basically are very amenable to anything to make it happy. It's our DEP that we have to satisfy, and all the various environmental concerns, which I know you're familiar with. But this is going to be a difficult project, but it's something we need to tackle. And we have tackled, we're starting.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Everybody okay? Do you have any other questions?
That's
All right, we will start with department head reports. We'll give Ed a break. Maureen, you can start.
I'd just like to say the municipal court, the holiday weekend coming up, we're ready for the start of the summer season. I'd like to congratulate the mayor and commissioners on the election, and also let you know, I don't know if everybody heard that last Friday, Deanna Krupp, who's the deputy court administrator, was installed as the president for Atlantic County Court Administrators Association. So I know she'll represent the city well. That's it.
Thank you, Maureen. Jim?
like to congratulate the commissioners and mayor on the election. John, I look forward to working with you in the future. And Mayor, it was great working with you in the past. And Maury, it was great working with you in the past. Do we want to talk about the flood, or do we want to just, we want to talk about that now, or John?
I mean, are you asking me?
No, John.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. I think we all should have at least be on the table. Sorry. Yes, please, Jim. I think you should bring it up so that everybody's on the same page.
Okay, I was going to wait till June, but we can work with it now. As you know, we are a CRS-driven town with our flood insurance discount. The flood insurance discount is pretty much $450,000 per class change, so we're at 25%. So do the math, 25% of $450,000 is equal to $1.8 million we save the citizens of Margate every year. Back in 2013, we had a modification by Amanda Goins. She came in and gave us a Class 5 discount because of our adoption of the advisory-based flood elevation. We got a 2,895 points at that point, which bumped us to a Class 5. As you know, we're in a certification year as of April 15th, 2015. I've emailed basically everybody a copy of that modification. What Mrs. Goins has informed me is that since we don't utilize the ABFE map and we use the preliminary working map, which we adopted in 2013 after it came out, I think that was like around December, we're losing the credit on our point system for our CRS. We're going to lose close to 800 to 900 points. The ABFE map is a more restrictive map, but the way we had worked the preliminary working map, they're almost equal. The only thing we're not looking forward to doing is implementing the V zone. We're maintaining just the A zone, which is the whole entire city. If you want, I can break it down on a map, but it's pretty simple. The ABFE map has certain zones that are around a 12, some zones are 11, some zones are 10 or 9. Our preliminary working map is a 9, 10, and a lot of it is 8. This might all sound very confusing, but when you see it on the paper, it's clearly defined by the standards that we've been implementing in the city. The way we've been implementing the preliminary working map is almost identical to the ABFE map, but we're missing it by 1 foot. And that's only in the President Streets, Madison, Monroe, Adams, where the lowest part of town is. But if we utilize the higher, the more restrictive map, we can maintain the ABFE, which is already in our flood prevention ordinance, and keep the preliminary working map in force also. We would just take the more restrictive map. John has a house. He lives on Amherst Avenue. We looked it up the other day. He's in an AE9. He built to 12. In the ABFE map, he would have been a 9. So he would have been, if he used the ABFE map, he would have been lower than he is now underneath the preliminary working map. Is everybody clear on that? The only thing that we have to be careful on is that we need to keep the ABFE map in our flood prevention ordinance, but I need direction from my city solicitor to go forward with it to my zoning officer to let him know that he can utilize the higher or the more restrictive map. He will not utilize the ABFE map until he's directed to do so, and that's why I brought this to your attention. I have copies of all the reports. I am only working to try to save the citizens money on their flood insurance, which we know is going to go up in the next 4 years. It's already gone up. People are paying $6,000. Got a call today. I told him try Lloyd's of London or something, but it's incredible. The insurance is going to go through the roof in the next 4 years. So if we can maintain a 25% or possibly go to a 30% where we're close, we could make a class 4 discussion.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. First off, I want to thank Jimmy for bringing it up. And secondly, after, when Jimmy says ISO, it's the Insurance Services Office. And it's an auditing, it's basically they come in and audit to make sure we're doing what's right. And even though, as I went through this 3-page, single-line report, which both Commissioner Blumberg and Mayor Becker have seen, I believe you've seen it, it makes a lot of recommendations, but what I felt was most important, and I want to mention it now, is that since Superstorm Sandy, our construction office under Jim Galantino had, and along with the city engineer and the solicitor, have done some of the right things to make things right here, and our rating is pretty good right now. We were at a 6, and I believe we're at a 5 now, and we're only 200 points, 300 points off of going to a 4, which would make things better for us. But I need the professionals, like Ed Wahlberg and our solicitor, their input to really know if we're doing the right thing.
I'd like to comment too. What I have done now, after confirmed with our city administrators, I've sent all of you a letter of explanation. This is an extremely complicated question. There are a lot of ramifications. Commissioner Blumberg and Mayor Becker, you might recall the discussions we had about freeboard. Should we go to 3? Should we go to 4? Should we stay at 2? I think ultimately, basically, we went with 2. I've sent you a letter to try to, by email, with copies of our ordinances, so you can take some time to study it. What do you have to study? You might say, well, what's the ramifications? Well, one of the ramifications is you start having these houses ever higher, and in a lot of situations, you'll have existing homes which don't meet setbacks going up. I'll give you an example. Let's say a house is 3 foot off the property line. They're supposed to be 8. Now they come in, if we go to the flood elevation of the V-zone requirement, which was the first map, they're going to be raising up pretty high, maybe 7, 8 feet. So you're going to have the neighbor next door quite upset in many instances, and I've already heard some of these, not just in Margate, but in other towns as well, as to the negative impact. It's my opinion, and my letter is that this is a policy decision that the 3 of you need to give Jimmy and myself guidance. We apparently have the discretion as to which map we want to use. For instance, Ocean City made a determination. They're using the more recent map called the preliminary work map, which lowered the elevations. Longport, on the other hand, through Bruce Funk, they're using that first map out that we call the ABFE. That's the one that's mostly purple. The second one that came out had a lot of lime green, if you've ever seen the actual maps. We'll bring them to the next meeting so you can take a look at it. But the point is, it's a complicated issue. There's a lot of ramifications. But the bottom line is, Jimmy's big concern is, and I agree with him, will we lose points on this flood insurance rating so that now, you know, Margate, it's only Margate and a couple other towns that have the highest flood insurance rating, where we get, what do we get off? 25%. Citywide. Well, that's a very good goal to try to get to that 30%, which because it'll be another 5% on everybody's insurance premium. But the kickback on that is the harm is extra high structures. So if you go to renovate your building and you're in one of these zones that uses 12 or 13 as an elevation, now you've really got to raise your building rather than be able to fix it where it is, perhaps. There's trade-offs too with zoning. Take my letter. I gave you copies of the ordinances. We all know I like to talk. Jimmy is extremely knowledgeable in this, as is Eddie. Let's try to come to a meeting of the minds. How do you want to proceed, and make a decision by our next meeting, because we're under a time deadline. This Amanda Gowans told us, what, 30 days? Although I understand she's starting to waver on this issue about taking away points, but
June 5th is the deadline.
So we have a meeting, where, the 4th or the 3rd? And I think she would be satisfied if we told her what we were going to do.
Scott, the reason why we waited, it's not like we just threw this in the fire right away, but
Right,
John,
right.
we wanted you to be, the future commissioner to understand what we're trying to do. So we waited till you took office to bring this to the forefront. I didn't want to blindside the commission before the meeting, last week. So that was just fair to you.
So you look at this letter, you look at the exhibits. I know I have the maps, you have the maps. I'm right in my office. And the easy way you tell the difference is one is mostly purple and the newer one's mostly lime green. That's how I tell them. Because the one doesn't have a date on it. So how do you know which one's which? And we'll study it and come up with what the three of you feel is best for the city of Margate. Okay?
One other thing. What's going to happen in the future?
What you mean? What'll happen?
Maps are going to be changed.
Well, and again, we have another map change coming June 2016, supposedly. So now that map is going to come into effect. What does that mean? Well, that means if you go to this higher elevation now, so here's a window of opportunity where people may raise their houses, create parking underneath, whatever they're going to do. Now, come next June, as I understand it, Eddie, that'll set the new elevation, the map that comes out in a year from now. But we have the option of still going higher to have more points and more benefits. It's like, for instance, like when you built your house, John, your brand new house, what do you, like, you're 2 feet above? 12. So your flood insurance is probably nothing, not nothing.
$317.
It's minor, and we're seeing people with $3,000 flood insurance bills. So, but again, the trade-off is impact on the neighborhood, impact on the characteristics of your prevailing setbacks. There's a lot of ramifications.
Maureen?
Yeah, I do. I have something. I have a comment, and I met briefly with Jimmy before the meeting today. I think we have two problems here, independent yet interrelated. And what I'm saying is that it sounds like we're under a time bind for our flood insurance rating. June 5th, I'm hearing. And so maybe what we need to do is make a decision on that, but long-term, or even not so long-term, we have a lot of people in town that are unhappy with the way construction is going in our town. That we're tearing down a cape and we're building 2, 3-story mansions. And, we're interfering with our neighbors, and it seems like what I would suggest is that we try and handle these two situations together, in that we put together a little team of experts, if you will, people that we consider experts, along with some citizens, a couple of citizens, maybe a real estate person, maybe a builder, maybe a member of the planning board, and try and look at how and I know Ocean City is doing this, and I know they've been debating it back and forth. What do we want? How do we maintain the character of our town and still not infringe on people's rights to develop their properties? And it's, and knocking on doors, it's a big problem. There's a lot of people that are unhappy with the way the town is moving. And I know we probably can't say, hey, if there's a cape on a 40-foot piece of property, you have to replace it with a cape. If you have a 2-story, you got to replace it with a 2-story. If you have a single-family house, you have to replace it with a single-family house. But there are things I think that we should look at, and I don't know when we look at them, if we start looking at them now, or do we look at them in conjunction with, re-looking at our master plan. Ed, what?
Yeah, our master plan is due this year, okay? And I believe we have funding already in place for it that has from the post-Sandy planning grant for our master plan review and our land use ordinance. So that's going to be coming up soon, because it's been 10 years since our last master plan update. So that's the perfect time to look at this. And that's what we looked at that's what was looked at the last time, bulk issues. So, bulk standards are one thing we need to look at, but relative to what Jimmy's saying, I think we have to deal with that before June 4th, obviously. Just because once they take it away, it's tremendously difficult to get the points back again. They're real easy taking them away. It's real hard giving them. So I think we need to deal with that first, and then look at how that impacts. Let that decision play into how we play with our bulk requirements in our land use ordinance.
Right, and so maybe I missed something in my earlier meeting with Jimmy. I thought I understood that we were really only talking about one area in town where we were talking about adding a foot to the height of a home in that one area. And so if that's the case, in order to keep the rating, for me, it wasn't a big issue. But now I think I'm hearing from Scott maybe something different. Maybe that it's more than one area, and maybe it's density, so I'm a little confused then, and I haven't read his letter yet. Maybe that'll help clear it up.
I'll give you an example. Jimmy, straighten me out where I go wrong. Let's say you have an existing house at ground level, and you violate all the setbacks. Now, you don't want to decrease the size of your house. You say, you know what, I'll raise my house. Oh, we have an ordinance and a state statute that lets me raise it to base flood elevation +3. So now they take the house and they raise it 7 or 8 feet. Which you're seeing some of that. I think you're better off if you have brand new homes built, but a lot of times they may decide they don't want to do it because they're not going to get those setbacks. They're not going to get that lot coverage. Am I wrong in that, Jimmy? Or?
Well, but you're saying that this hypothetical house that you're talking about, the finished first floor is, you don't walk up any steps, you're at 7. You're at ground level. Is that what is that
Or 1 foot above, yeah,
So
you're low.
Okay, so you're low, and then by adopting this map, we're going to say you'll raise to 13. So you'll raise that house 6 foot, is what you're telling me.
Am I wrong, Jimmy?
Like I said, it's in the President Streets where we're at 6. That's where you're going to see an 8-foot house. That's where the houses are 8 foot right now. Adams Avenue, go right here. There's 2 houses being built. You can park underneath those houses. That's how high they are. Okay. That's where the 1 foot is.
I'd like to make a suggestion. We're under the gun for June the 5th. We have a meeting June the 4th. Okay? Why don't Jimmy, you, and Scott, and Ed kind of get together, make a recommendation, and it gives us also, as 3 commissioners, time to study this a little bit further.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, that's perfect. Yeah, that's good. Really, when you get my letter, that's what I'm saying. You 3, you're the ones going to take the heat from the public. You should have a good understanding of what this issue is.
Okay.
Has a big impact on the city.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Jim, you have anything else?
I think that's enough.
Okay.
Yeah, we beat it to death pretty
Scott?
good, I think. But you have the gist of it.
Mayor, can we set a timeline on that so that it's not the 4th?
Yeah. John brings up a good point. Can you guys get back to us with some more information, obviously not on the 4th, before, as soon as you can?
I met with Jimmy today, and I've been vacillating on this, but Jimmy laid out some things for me that I need to go now and study those maps and actually look at the 2 maps side by side, lot by lot, to see what the impacts are.
Okay. So you guys will get together with whoever else you need and get back to us as soon as possible. Okay? Good. Jim, you okay with that, John?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Scott, do you have anything else?
No, Mayor.
Rich? Mr. Deeney?
I'm going to pass it this time.
Lisa?
Good afternoon. Good luck to each of the commissioners, and welcome, John. It's nice to have you at the table. I think you have a lot to offer the city. The only thing I want to mention, I've been at a conference the last 3 days, so I'm playing a little catch-up here, but I wanted to point out, if you noticed on the bill list, it's considerably higher than usual. It's over $13 million, and I don't want you to be alarmed about that, because the majority of that is due to a debt service payment we have coming due on June 1st. It was our 2006 bond issue, and a portion of that was refunded in 2013. The refunded portion is held in escrow by the bank that purchased our bonds, and the way it works is each time it's coming due until it expires, we pay that amount that's due of the refunded portion, and we are reimbursed. In this case, it's from Deutsche Bank. So we're going, the bill list says it's over $13 million, but we're due back over $9 million from that escrow account. So I don't know if anyone, was a little alarmed with that. One other thing I just want to mention is the conference I was at was for collectors and treasurers, and had was networking. Linda Morgan and myself both attended. And we're both on board, and we're looking to improve the finance office by way of our utility and our tax collections. And we're looking to switch our software vendor, which hopefully will make things a little bit more efficient and easier to use, and provide greater resources and better reports available to everybody to view. We have a demonstration by Edmunds. They're coming in on Tuesday, and we're looking to gear up and have this live by January 1st of next year. And along those same lines, we've been discussing for a long time, and Linda's in agreement, we would like to have give taxpayers or residents the ability to pay online. And once we have this tax and utility software in place, we can very easily facilitate that through Edmunds. So that's one of the things that I am working on along with Linda. And on the same lines, I would like to give credit to Linda, because although she does not attend these meetings, she's kind of an unsung hero here. And I just want to point out the immense responsibility that she has and the tremendous job that she does for the city. We have an extremely high collection rate. She's very efficient. She does an excellent job, and she's a great asset to the city. The only other thing I have is I would like to wish Jim a happy birthday and a great report on the CRS. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jim, do you want us all to sing happy birthday? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that, Jim. Tony?
I'm pleased to report for the fire department, rescue, and beach patrol that everything is doing well, and we are ready to start our summer this weekend. That's all I have.
Thank you, Tony. Frank?
Yeah, we've been quite busy around town. If you noticed the streetscapes, we have all the flower and hanging baskets up. We still have to do the parkway with flowers. All our public properties beside the parkway have their flowers planted already. We've been very busy on the beach. We've started the beach cleaning. All the handicap accesses are open. All the Moby mats are down. We're ready actually for the summer. The only thing is the porta potties, they'll be coming in June. We do that because they're really not used until really the 4th of July. Along the parkway, we have the fountains on. They'll be on for this weekend, and we do have all the flags up along the streets. And we plan on a good weekend. The weather looks great, and hopefully a lot of people are in town. That's all I have.
Thank you, Frank. Ed, you rest up yet?
I have a lot. I have a quick question for Frank before we move to Ed. Frank, are we set? You're set for the parade is Monday, correct?
Yes.
And are we set with the sound system and all down there?
We are set with the sound system.
Good.
We are set with the chairs. We're also going to have the people that line up here. We will have the restroom open for them at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then after the parade starts, we will close down the building. And they're only going to be isolated to the back end of the building where the restrooms are.
Right, okay. And guys, we were asked to be here, I think 9:30, parade starts at 10?
No. The parade is at 10. That was-
Parade starts at 10, I know
Parade starts
that.
Okay.
So if we get here at 9, we're standing around for a good long while, unless something changed. Joanna, can you just verify that for us? You don't mind? Because I saw the email that said 9, and I
No,
thought,
that's incorrect. I spoke to the
Oh, okay.
Florida yesterday.
all right,
Parade is at 10 o'clock.
parade starts at 10. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Sorry, Ed.
Okay, what I'm going to start doing is make sure that I email everyone the engineer's report a day before the meeting, so if there are any items on the report that anyone has a question, they can formulate the question, and I can try to address it at the meeting. So that'll be, from now on, everyone will see the engineer's report before the end of the day on Wednesday, emailed to them. Okay, I'm just going to go through the active items on the report. First one is the municipal building upgrades, Phase 2. That is this building. It is essentially everything in the boiler room is going to be replaced. We advertised the bids. The lowest responsible bidder, and I'll clarify that in a moment, was Falaska Mechanical. They were at $368,000, which was well below my estimate, which I was very happy. Falaska was the successful bidder on the last project. They also have a history with the building because they did the work when the school was renovated back in 2000. Now, the boiler room was barely touched back when the school was renovated in 2000, so that is the necessity of doing it now. We're going to replace both boilers with much more high-efficient smaller boilers that will be staged so that when there's a low heating load, one boiler will fire, higher heating load, the second boiler will fire, and all the ancillary items will be replaced. We did have a lower bidder, Dolan.
One additional item on that. When we came into this building, we were required, because of the size of the other boiler, to have an employee here at all times when it was occupied.
We needed a black seal,
We ended
correct.
up having to contract with the Board of Education to have that black seal. This will totally resolve that issue.
Yes. Yes, so we will, but because the heating loads are much less now, there's no need. We were able to downsize the boilers, and the efficiency of the boilers are much higher, so we'll be below the black seal. We had a bidder, Dolan Mechanical, who submitted a bid of $327,000. Their bid was flawed. There was a clerical error in it. They requested their bid withdrawn. We researched it. We looked at them. We know Dolan Mechanical. They're a good contractor. Felt that their bid should be withdrawn. So I believe there's actually a resolution on the agenda to that effect. So Falaska, again, it's a good contractor. They know the facility. We've worked with them, and their bid was very good. The next highest bidder was in the mid-400s.
See that?
So we're asking that be awarded tonight. The Ventnor Avenue Streetscape Project, which includes areas up and around Douglas, Essex, Exeter, as well as down at this end of town, Benson, Decatur area. That is going to be, those bids were advertised on the 15th. We're receiving them on the 10th. A good portion of that project is a grant-funded funding, so whatever we spend, we will get back. Municipal building emergency generators, those bids will be received on the 27th. Again, a portion of that project was, we received a hazardous mitigation grant for. It would put 2 generators, at this facility, one for the main system, for the mechanical system, the air conditioning, the other for lighting power, because it's two separate services. It also gives us some system redundancy. So those will be received on the 27th. I don't know if we'll be able to get them on the agenda for the 4th. We may have to have the state look at the bids and concur, but it's my intent to try to get that on the agenda for the 4th of June if we can. The sooner we award, the sooner they can order the generators, the sooner we'll have them. The same thing with these boilers. They need to get them.
Excuse me, question for Ed. The placement of the generators, could you define where they're going to be located?
They're essentially going to be located where the existing portable generator is right now. It's a much larger footprint. We're going to fence the whole facility with an 8-foot white vinyl fence, and then plant some probably arborvitae type landscaping in front of it to screen the area.
Just curious, because we are in a neighborhood, have we spoken to the neighbors across the street where it's going to be located?
In the past, the neighbors have had input, but it's the only place that we can place them because that's where the gas service comes in, that's where the power comes in, and what we usually, especially in a residential area, when we specify, they have what's called a hospital sound enclosure as well as a hospital muffler. It's the most restrictive, lowest decibel that you can get. They will exercise for 20 minutes once a week, each one. We can set that whenever we want it, if we want to do it in the middle of the day on a Wednesday, or we can stagger it to try to make it so that it does not affect the neighbors. But when it's done, it should look better than what's there now, because right now we just have Big Bertha strapped down and it's visible. This will be totally enclosed in fencing, and it'll feed right into the electrical room, which is right behind there.
Thank you.
And I know a guy that has some arborvitae. I bet you could get them cheap. They're about 15, 20 foot tall, and he's looking to get rid of them, so.
Well, we'll keep it in mind, because we would love to have that whole thing screened.
Good. And just for clarification, the only time we're really going to hear those is when power's down, other than when you're exercising, right?
You'll have the 20 minutes once a week, but other than that, it's when either a major windstorm, a hurricane, an ice storm, whatever.
Good.
And the reason we got this generator, I don't mean to be so wordy, but just so everyone understands, the reason we received the money for the generator is because this will become the emergency shelter. So we need to have power in the event of another hurricane or a major blizzard that we need to set up here. Okay, redevelopment of well number 9, that's also on the agenda. That's just, we try to redevelop our wells every 5 to 7 years. That way the cost stays lower and we have dependable water. That work will happen in the fall. Okay, Ventnor Avenue Parkway Island Irrigation System. Again, there's a resolution to award that. That came in at about I forget the exact amount, 105,000, something like that. Good number, very good contractor. It was a single bidder, but the contractor I've worked with, they're a good contractor. That money, or that project also will be funded by FEMA to replace the damage that happened during Sandy to our irrigation system. Our 2014/15 road program should be advertised June 12th. We'll receive it, to be honest with you, I don't have the date, but probably sometime in July. We'd like to give them enough time. That work will begin in the fall. Amherst Avenue, which is our 2014 state aid funded project, we are scheduled to open those bids on June 10th. Again, that one will be, the construction will start in the fall. The municipal building, Union Avenue School playground equipment here, we received a proposal and we'll be forwarding that recommendation to the city. The material to put new, the soft tiles underneath the playground, the material is on state contract. What we're soliciting quotes for the actual installation of that material. Our 2013/14 road program, the final paving on that program will be done tomorrow morning on Marshall Avenue. Everything else is essentially done with the exception of punch list items, maybe sprinkler heads, some grass restoration, that type of stuff. But the big work, Marshall Avenue tomorrow morning, and then everything is final paved, and that program essentially will be complete. The Washington Avenue building, we rescheduled the job meeting for next week. We're getting our submittals in from the contractor, we're reviewing them, we've been working with Jimmy with the permits, and I'm waiting for the copy. We've given them our recommendations on traffic control, I'm waiting for their submittal. As soon as they have their submittals rolling, and they have all their permits in place, they can take off running. There will be disruption in front of Wawa, there's no doubt, but we're trying to minimize it.
Mayor, quick question. I'm not privy, just coming on board, what's the total timeline on that reconstruction?
I believe it's a 6-month contract. So we're anticipating being in before Christmas of next year. Okay, that's this year, 2015. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought up Wawa, and it's not on the agenda, but could you do me a favor, and the police chief isn't here, it's just been a sore spot for me for a long time, the barricades that we have in the street in front of the Wawa to keep people from going down a one-way street. For some reason, we need barricades. And I understand the nature of people not understanding the town, that they just want to go in there. Is there something, I know we tried, nice posts that didn't last. Is there something that we could maybe look at permanently that looks a little better than those
we put
block
a grant,
barricades?
We have put a grant, or actually Jim Martella put a grant in for that. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful. We did a little design, kind of like a traffic calming sidewalk, extending the sidewalk there, the drainage and everything.
Okay.
It could be done.
Okay.
And it's not that big.
When our project gets done, with or without the grant, we're going to recommend.
All right, good. Thank you.
Okay. The last but not least, the South Jersey Gas Project. They are scheduled to be done, all the main work, tomorrow. Most of the services are in. However, there are a number of services that the people have requested they wait until June when they come down to do them. We rode the streets last Thursday after we have a bi-weekly, or we try to do a bi-weekly status meeting with the gas company. We rode the streets with them. We identified a number of areas they have to clean up the patches that they did and try to make them better. What we're going to do next is essentially ride every street with them to determine what the scope of restoration will be on each street. At that point, we can do some horse trading with them to make sure to try to get as many streets repaved, at least half the street repaved, if not the whole street repaved. What I would suggest we do, they have another 5 zones, 5 areas that they're going to start in the fall. Prior to that, we should amend our street opening ordinance. And the perfect example is Ventnor's street opening ordinance. Their ordinance essentially, when there's multiple openings on the street, requires the street be repaved curb to curb. So I would suggest that we look at our ordinance, revise it to mirror that fact, and maybe make some other adjustments to it to make that happen.
Ed, and we've talked about this before. This is kind of personal. On my block, in one block, on the one side, there's 24 patches.
See, as far as I'm...
And that's not an unusual street.
No.
It's just that I have to ride it every day. I mean, they've got to make us whole. They really do.
Mike, I talked a little bit about that exact situation with Rich the other day. And what I think I think what Ed is doing is 100% correct. We need to get from them a list of what streets they're going to do and how they're going to do them. Once we have that and we have an agreement on what they're going to do, I think that we ought to look at the streets that might not fall under their purview, and we should consider base paving those ourselves, like a scratch coat, if you will.
which apparently is, okay, so we might not be doing the water and we might not be doing the sewer, but we're just going to re-blacktop it, which will last for how many, 2, 3, 4 years to just get all those patches corrected. And this way,
It's the perfect example of what they've done in the past, which, while it didn't aesthetically please the neighbors, they did the uniblock north of Rumson. The exact situation on your street, Mayor. There were 10 openings on that street. They came, they milled out half the street, they paved half the street. The rideability is excellent. It's just aesthetically, it's two different colors. I think we have the right to fight with them to do what we want done.
I agree.
So what we can do, that's why I want to see what they're proposing, okay, as far as, and the response I get from them initially is, well, we'll do whatever your ordinance requires. Well, we'll make our ordinance require whatever we want then. But being reasonable, they have to be reasonable, we have to be reasonable. We have a few streets that we're paving as part of our road programs that they don't have to restore. For example, Amherst Avenue, from Washington to Vendome, that we're going to pave that next year. They don't have to do anything else on that street.
Why don't we swap
Why don't we trade
Exactly. That's when I said horse trading. That's the horse. Marshall Avenue, we repaved the whole street. They don't have to pave that.
So why don't we wait and see what the results of your negotiations with them are, and we'll deal with it then? How's that?
Well, can all three of us be invited to that meeting, and who's eligible or able to go, be in attendance, because I'd like to be at that meeting,
Well,
when you drive the streets?
In the past, we've had many years ago, we used to pick our roads by, we'd have a commission meeting, a work session, and then the work session would adjourn to the fire vehicle, the Suburban. And we would drive the streets.
Right, and we should get back to that.
I would welcome that because, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
But Ed, I understand what we're going through, and it needs to be done. But we need to be on top of this because we're a summer shore resort, and our visitors and our summer residents are coming into town starting mid-June. The condition of their patches, the settlements occurred, there has to be maintenance done, it has to be brought up to a smooth surface. And I don't care if they're going to repave everything in September or October. We need to do it. I want to be in that vehicle when you're driving around with the people from the gas company, because it's not, we're not going to accept anything unless it's done right.
Okay. And just so you also know, when this project started, it was their intention to have all the, and this was represented to us, that they would have all the paving redone before Memorial Day. Okay? Obviously, that hasn't happened. Now, did we have a stretch of real cold weather?
Sure.
You can't predict that.
Nobody's complaining about not being paved.
Yeah.
There has to be maintenance done to what exists right now.
Yeah.
Let's get by the summer, and then the paving that occurs after that. And again, your recommendation about revisiting the street opening permit, we're totally, I'm sure Commissioner Blumberg and Mayor Becker and myself are all totally on board. This way, the next time they come into town, we get half-street restorations based on how many openings they put on that, full-street restorations if the number doubles.
Sure, absolutely.
And let's benefit by it. And when we have a street that we're going to have on our road program that they don't have to repave, we want equal repaving on the other side somewhere else.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Also, just so everyone knows, one more thing, so the residents know, any street that's on the moratorium list, and there are a lot of them,
Full restoration.
full curb-to-curb restoration. Yes. So,
Okay,
I'm done.
thank you, Ed.
I had to wait 5 years to build a house because of your moratorium for 5 years, okay? I understand it.
You sure? Is that a sore point with you? Okay. At this point, we will open for public public comment. You may have 3 minutes on any of the items that were discussed here today.
Sewell, 22 West Drive. 4 quick questions. First 3 to Ed. The approximate age of the existing boilers at Union now? 35 years. Good enough. Second question, on the new generators, will they be jacked up on treated wood or something, even though this is one of the highest spots in the city?
Actually, they will, because this is relative, the site that we're looking at, where we're putting them here, is only about a foot below the FEMA flood elevation. We're taking them up that foot, plus 2 more feet for the fuel tank, the diesel fuel tank that'll be there. So they will be up, the fence will be 8 foot, the top of the generators will be somewhere around 9.5 feet to the top.
Okay, and you were mentioning, the curb to curb. It is my understanding that 4 years ago, Mayor Teresa Kelly ironed out a tough position with the gas company where she insisted curb to curb throughout Ventnor on any work they performed.
And that's reflected in the street opening permit. I mean, the street opening ordinance.
Yes, and I think that ordinance, that tougher ordinance, should be introduced tonight, at least in theory, to adopt Ventnor's tougher standard in order to get curb-to-curb treatment. Can't sit on your hands, can't sit on your brains. Last question to Frank. You mentioned that you were getting the beaches in order, and I can't think of anything more disorderly than raw, untreated fecal matter on the beaches, especially with grandchildren playing in the sand. And I think it's imperative, Frank, to give the visitors adequate notice that there are no dogs on the beach from May 15 or whatever it is, October 1st, whatever it is. And I would request that proper signage be erected on both sides of each entranceway, so the visitor can't say, well, I didn't know you couldn't have your dog here 6 o'clock in the morning. And perhaps, as an added safeguard, perhaps request the cleaning crews, if they see dogs on the beach, to give a ring to Dave and have some of his super troopers out there and correct the problem. Because it really drives people out of town. One of the reasons that Doug Donato left town is that his gal pal could not jog on the beach without having aggressive dogs chasing and intimidating her. And it was one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of the reasons. So I think from a quality of life standpoint, the dog issue must be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. Anyone else?
Sharon Simon, 424 North Thurlow Avenue. I'd like to congratulate the new commission. I have to say, of all the meetings I've attended, and there's been a lot of them, it's very nice to see the energy and the cooperation between the commission and department heads. I learned more tonight about what's going on in our city than the last probably year. Now, I know there's a lot of things happening, so it's new topics. It's very exciting, and I hope to see more of it. Thank you.
Thank you for that
you.
compliment.
Anyone else?
Richard Miskowski, 9000 Winchester Avenue. Getting to the generators, is it possible to have those generators put in the rear of the building where the big wall is, possibly in that corner or so?
The problem with, we have a sewer line that comes out of the building, the rear of the building, we'd have to reroute. And there's also, there's an egress issue with the back doors there. So it's difficult. I mean, the other problem is the electrical room is right there. And that's where all the high voltage, if you look at the services.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's really very difficult to move them any further than where they're at.
There's a couple new houses that were built right across the street, and I'm just wondering, how those people really feel with something being put up, a fence that sticks out over across, even down the street, You can see the fence put up in a large fence, too.
But the fence will be at approximately the same line as the black vinyl fence that's out there now, for the playground area. So I
That's a
don't...
page fence, you could see through it, you can see the playground, it's better to look at that open space.
No, we're
rather
going to
than-
line that with shrubs, though, sir. There's going to be nice shrubs all around
Vegetation
the
all around
perimeter.
it, so...
No, I understand that, but there's still a fence in the view. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Steve Warner, 103 North Sumner Avenue. I'd also like to congratulate the new commission. I hope you can work together for the betterment of the city. And I guess that's one thing I have to say. Also, I'd like you all to keep in mind your fiscal responsibility and the responsibility of the taxpayers to do the best job you can. That's not to say you don't have to spend money, but spend it as wisely as possible. And also, as far as the building codes, I wouldn't do anything to discourage people to come down here and spend $1 million, $1.5 million in a new home. It makes everybody's taxes at least stay stable. So let's not do anything to discourage people from coming here, okay, and spending their money and really beautifying the city, making the city look a lot better. Because a lot of these houses that are being torn down are really unsightly anyhow. All right, again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion, we close the public participation.
I'll second that motion.
Mayor Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Blumberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Amadeo?
Yes.
During department head reports, I neglected to ask the commissioners if they had any comment. Maureen, do you?
No, I've said enough. Thank you.
Anything?
I didn't hear you.
Would you like to say anything?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, then we're fine. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Mayor Becker?
Yes.
Commissioner Blumberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Amadeo?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This meeting is adjourned. We will take